the great disease that I'm trying to fight in the book is ideology. Indeed, it does not matter whether it is the right-wing ideology of someone like that wretched fellow William Bennett, or whether it is these endless pseudo-Marxists, pseudo-feminists, pseudo-Foucaultians, and so on, who now infest our academies.
Precisely why students of literature have become amateur political scientists, uninformed sociologists, incompetent anthropologists, mediocre philosophers, and overdetermined cultural historians, while a puzzling matter, is not beyond all conjecture. They resent literature, or are ashamed of it, or are just not at all that fond of reading it. Reading a poem or a novel or a Shakespeare tragedy is for them an exercise in contextualization, but not in a merely reasonable sense of finding backgrounds. The contexts, however chosen, are assigned more force and value than the actual poem by, say, Milton, the novel by Dickens, or Macbeth. I am not at all certain what the metaphor of social energies stands or substitutes for, but like the Freudian drives, such energies cannot write or read, or indeed do anything at all. Libido is a myth, and so are social energies. Shakespeare, scandalously facile, was an actual person who contrived to write Hamlet and King Lear, not a social energy. Shakespeare's scandal of originality is unacceptable to what now passes for literary theory. Either there were aesthetic values, or there are only the overdeterminations of race, class, and gender. You must choose, for if you believe that all value ascribed to poems, or plays, or novels, and stories is only a mystification in the service of the ruling class, then why should you read at all, rather than go forth to serve the desperate needs of the exploited classes? The idea that you benefit the insulted and injured by reading someone of their own origins, rather than reading Shakespeare, is one of the oldest illusions ever promoted by or in our schools. The deepest truth about secular canon formation is that it is performed neither by critics nor academies, let alone politicians. In fact, writers, artists, and composers themselves determine canons by bridging between strong precursors and strong successors. Let us take the most vital contemporary American authors, the poets Ashbery and Merrill, and the prose writer of epic fictions, Pynchon. I am moved to pronounce them canonical, but one cannot altogether know as yet. Canonical prophecy needs to be tested about 2 generations after a writer dies. Wallace Stevens, who lived from 1879 to 1955, is clearly a canonical poet, perhaps the major American poet after Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. Stevens's only rivals appear to be Robert Frost and T.S. Eliot. Pound and William Carlos Williams are more problematic, together with Marianne Moore and Gertrude Stein, when considered strictly for her verse, and Hart Crane died too soon. Stevens helped engender Merrill and Ashbery, as well as Elizabeth Bishop, A.R. Emmons, and others of real achievement, but it is too soon to know if endearing poets are emerging from their influence, though I myself believe so. When one or more very clearly has emerged, that will help confirm Stevens's canonicity, but not as yet Merrill or Ashbery, at least not to the same degree. It is a curious process, and I tend to challenge my own sense of it by asking, what about Yeats? The Anglo-Irish poets after him are enormously wary of his influence and seem to have fought him off. The answer again is that it takes some time, even to see influence accurately. Yeats died in 1939. After more than half a century, I can see his influence upon those who denied it, Eliot and Stevens, and their influence has been fecund, as in their joint effect upon Hart Crane, whose idiosyncratic accent, though disputed, floats almost everywhere. Eliot and Stevens had cultural stances fiercely opposed to one another, while Crane's relation to Eliot in particular was almost wholly antithetical. But socio-political considerations can be turned inside out by canon-producing influence relations. Crane rejected Eliot's vision, but could not evade Eliot's idiom. Great styles are sufficient for canonicity because they possess the power of contamination, and contamination is the pragmatic test for Canon-Formation. Immerse yourself, say, for several days altogether in reading Shakespeare, and then turn to another author, before, after, or contemporary with him. For experiment, try only the highest in each grouping, Homer or Dante, Cervantes or Ben Jonson, Tolstoy or Proust. The difference in the reading experience will be one of kind as well as of degree. That difference, universally felt from Shakespeare's time until now, is expressed alike by ordinary and sophisticated readers as having something to do with our sense of what we want to call, quote, natural, end quote. Dr. Johnson assured us that nothing could please for long except just representations of general nature. That assurance still seems unassailable to me, though much of what is now exalted each week could not pass the Johnsonian test. Shakespearean representation, its supposed imitation of what is held to be most essential in us, has been felt to be more natural than anyone else's mirroring of reality ever since the plays were first staged. To go from Shakespeare to Dante, or Cervantes, or even Tolstoy, is somehow to have the illusion of suffering a loss in sensuous immediacy. We look back at Shakespeare and regret our absence from him because it seems an absence from reality. The motives for reading, as for writing, are very diverse and often not clear even to the most self-conscious readers or writers. Perhaps the ultimate motive for metaphor, or the writing and reading of figurative language, is the desire to be different, to be elsewhere. In this assertion, I follow Nietzsche, who warned us that what we can find words for is already dead in our hearts, so that there is always a kind of contempt in the act of speaking. Hamlet agrees with Nietzsche, and both might have extended the contempt to the act of writing. But we do not read to unpack our hearts, so there is no contempt in the act of reading. Traditions tell us that the free and solitary self writes in order to overcome mortality, but I think that the self, in its quest to be free and solitary, ultimately reads with one aim only: to confront greatness, which is the basis of the aesthetic experience once called the sublime. Our common fate is age, sickness, death, and oblivion. Our common hope, tenuous but persistent, is for some version of survival. Confronting greatness, as we read, is an intimate and expensive process, and has never been much in critical vogue. Now, more than ever, it is out of fashion, when the quest for freedom and solitude is being condemned as politically incorrect, selfish, and not appropriate to our anguished society. Greatness in the West's literature centers upon Shakespeare, who has become the touchstone for all who come before and after him, whether they are dramatists, lyric poets, or storytellers. Shakespeare had no true precursor in the creation of character, except for Chaucerian hints, and has left no one after him untouched by his ways of representing human nature. Shakespeare's originality was and is so easy to assimilate that we are disarmed by it and unable to see how much it has changed us and goes on changing us. Much of Western literature after Shakespeare is, in varying degree, partly a defense against Shakespeare, who can be so overwhelming an influence as to drown out all who are compelled to be his students. The enigma of Shakespeare is his universalism. Kurosawa's film versions of Macbeth and King Lear are thoroughly Kurosawa and thoroughly Shakespeare. Even if you regard Shakespearean personages as roles for actors rather than as dramatic characters, you are still unable to account for the human persuasiveness of Hamlet or Cleopatra when you compare them to the roles provided by Ibsen, surely the principal post-Shakespearean dramatist that Europe has brought forth. When we move from Hamlet to Peer Gynt, from Cleopatra to Hedda Gabler, we sense that personality has waned, that the Shakespearean demonic has ebbed into the Ibsenite trollishness. The miracle of Shakespeare's universalism is that it is not purchased by any transcending of contingencies. The great characters and their plays accept being embedded in history and in society, while refusing every mode of reduction, historical, societal, and theological, or are belated psychologizings and moralizings.
Like, subscribe, notification bell, join the herd.